My name is Michelle, and I've been attending church here for about 5 years. My husband Daniel and I joined about 3 years ago, so that's who I am this morning for those of you who don't know me. The cover of Oprah magazine this month says, "There's the one who gave birth to you, and then there's the one woman who raised you up." I love that. We are so grateful today for those who gave us life, and those who then filled any empty spaces in our hearts to give us more life. They might be the same person, they might be our mother, but they might be other women and other people too. They might be several folks who are coming to our minds right now. Those empty spaces could have even been filled by a group or an organization. We also may feel that our experiences have mothered us. All God's children and GLBTQ folks, did you know that you've been mothering me? You have. Perhaps it seems like it maybe should be the other way around because I am a mother, and some of you do call me Mama Bahr or Mama Bear, and I'm okay with that. But I promise you, in my heart, you have all given me the things that I equate to motherhood: safety, security, unconditional love, sacrificial love, challenge, and most importantly, no shame, no judgment. You folks have been mothering me for a long, long time. I had an inkling in my gut when my son was about 3 years old that he might not be straight, but I couldn't put my finger on it. It wasn't really anything specific, it was just an intuitive feeling. As years went on, I didn't really give it much thought, to be quite honest with you. I noticed that my son Cole really loved the arts, music, and theater. He was such a beautiful, sensitive soul. We had a very busy, full life when our kids were young, and I'm so grateful for the privileges that we had. I spent many, many of those years driving our kids around in our old station wagon. Some of you got to ride in that here too. All right. Maybe in other people's eyes, I just had this wonderful, great suburban wife life kind of a thing going on, but there is no such thing, not in my life anyway. I found myself in recovery from alcohol shortly after I got married to Dale, and both of my kids were under 6 years old when I was newly sober. Adding to my newfound sobriety, I began to struggle with major depression shortly after I got sober. At times, the depression was really bad. Most of the time, I managed with the help of my therapist and some medication. I was not able to work outside the home for several years because of that depression. And boy, did that teach me to reserve any kind of judgment for people who are not working right now. Yep. I battled with severe, deep darkness for quite a few years. I can tell you that my husband mothered me through the worst part of my illness. I am forever grateful for a husband who loved me through those dark years. I'm so grateful for the tools that I've learned along the way to somehow have a healthy brain these days. But it was brutal getting here. I'm not kidding. Mental health illness can just be brutal. I think that I see some heads nodding today. Many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is really tough. My therapist used to say to me, "The gift of depression," and I'd want to choke on those words. Or choke her, but I'm not going to say that out loud. Now that I am on the other side, however, I see the wisdom in her words. My therapist mothered me. I had no idea that the depression and the suicidal feelings path that I was on would lead me to understanding someday how my son was feeling and what he was going through. As my kids got a little older and more independent, I decided to go back to school and work in a counseling licensure and go on to graduate school. While I was sitting in night school working on my counseling licensure, I didn't realize that my son was at home and he was really struggling. When I really truly knew he was gay was right about that time, and he was about 14 years old. He confided in me one morning on a drive to school that he was having suicidal feelings, and I knew how that felt. So I knew that I had to get him help right away, or I was going to lose him. I knew in my heart he was struggling with his sexuality. I tried to open the discussion about that, but he kind of slammed the door shut, and at 14 years old, that's okay, I get it. As I pondered the fact that he might be gay, so many things started to make sense to me, especially his aversion to going to our church youth group and anything else church related for the church that we were going to at the time. We were not attending what I would call now a gay-friendly church, and I'm sure somewhere in those formative years, he definitely picked up on that. Through an amazing course of events, many of you know that I made my first trip up here to All God's Children which was about 17 years ago. That was about the same time frame that my son was suicidal. The love, grace, and compassion that was given to me that Sunday I visited here, I'll never forget, and I've talked about here before. After the service that day, I went downstairs for a cup of coffee and asked the table of folks that I was sitting with, how can I be a better mom? What I didn't say out loud and what I didn't ask and what I came to the table with was a lot of shame and guilt about how I had been parenting my son. I couldn't seem to find a way out of that. I couldn't seem to find some forgiveness, self-forgiveness for myself. I wasn't a P-flag mom. I didn't even know that there was a P-flag at the time. But there was so much that I had never questioned, I had never thought about. I wasn't even educated about. The table full of folks that morning not only told me how I could be a better mom to Cole, but they encouraged me to move on and to let my shame and my guilt go. It was sage wisdom. I certainly wasn't then who I am now, but I eventually reached a level of self-forgiveness and self-acceptance. I don't know about you folks, but I firmly believe sometimes the hardest person to forgive is ourselves. It's ourselves, okay? I could forgive pretty much anybody around me for pretty much anything that they had done, but for some reason this was tougher here. I kept asking God, is my own ignorance too big of a sin for you to forgive? You know, I think sometimes God just kind of grins and shakes the head. Anyway, we need to let that guilt go. All it really does is keep us all stuck in the past. And not one of us sitting here today are living there. We're all living right here in this moment. So guilt and shame, it never serves us well. I let go of it pretty much shortly thereafter I left the church 17 years ago after that Sunday of visiting. So, as you all know, the world was still a pretty tough place for a gay kid in 2004. It's still a rough place in 2019 for a gay kid. I was so worried about my son being bullied, beat up, or even killed. He found an amazing group of friends in high school through speech, drama, and band, and he seemed to be doing much better with medication and therapy towards the end of high school. I seemed to be floundering a little bit with how I could help him. I called my gay cousin in Indianapolis during that time. Paul was really the only gay person that I knew very well, and he was so encouraging. He kept reminding me just to love my son, and then he suggested that I maybe venture out and start to meet some other people, start to meet some other GLBTQ folks and some other advocates and allies and parents. I knew I wasn't the first mom to have these feelings, but I felt like I was a little bit out of my league, which I may add today with it being Mother's Day. I think most parents feel like they're out of their league. Let me just raise both hands, okay? Yeah, there are other hands going up. So many of us parents, you know, we can read books, we can get advice, things that we watch other people do as parents, but really it kind of comes down to parenting our own, and we just kind of don't really know what we're doing. So I'm sorry if I burst a bubble for you this morning, but we don't know what we're doing, okay? All right. So what I did with my time was I volunteered for what used to be known as Minnesota AIDS Project's MAP. I got trained as an HIV/AIDS public speaker, and I got on the Red Cross speaking circuit. I helped with the Minnesota AIDS Walk for many years. I met so many cool people. I was a volunteer for Claire Housing, making a meal for the folks at Agape Dose the first Sunday of every month. I did that for several years too. I was meeting a ton of people that I'm so grateful to call my good friends today. I was listening more than I was talking, and I was learning. When my son graduated from high school, he moved to Detroit with his then boyfriend and started a career as a flight attendant. Everything honestly seemed to be swimming along for everybody in our family. Certainly not perfect, but the waters had calmed. But just when the waters calm, sometimes God's not done with us yet, and God wasn't done with me yet, all right? Something in me was starting to shift. I could feel it. I didn't really have the words for it. I just knew that I was headed off into a new life direction. So in 2009, I decided to volunteer for Pride. I had no idea what I was going to be doing, but it looked like a lot of fun. I'd never been to Pride before, but from what I saw on TV, it looked like fun. So I pre-registered, and I showed up at the volunteer tent that Sunday morning of Pride. I found out I was going to be helping with the parade. Cool. I was introduced to the two coordinators, Dana and Andy, and I was given a key to the golf cart. And many of you know who I'm talking about when I say Dana and Andy. because they have been involved with our Thursdays table ministry and been very generous, and they're married now and have 2 lovely daughters. So anyway, that's the first time I met them. So I had to drive this golf cart from Loring Park to the parade start down Hennepin Avenue and drive back again with a variety of people, many of them needing a ride because they were volunteering at different areas of the parade. Some were VIPs that I had to drop off by their floats. Everybody that day was in celebration mode, and I was seriously having the time of my life, chatting, listening, laughing, lots of different outfits, lots of different hair. The pets are so cool. It was just so much fun. So I met a lot of people that morning. Everybody had a really cool story to tell. I loved every minute of it. I couldn't believe it when it was 10:55 that morning, and the parade was set to begin at 11. I was at the front of the parade, just hanging out on my golf cart, waiting for whatever I was supposed to do next, and Andy came over to me and handed me a banner. I looked at the rolled up banner, and I said, "What? Should I take this back to Loring Park? I'm confused. I'm not quite sure what you want me to do with this." So she then told me to get out of the golf cart. Someone else was going to drive it, and they needed me to carry this banner. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm in the Pride Parade. I wasn't expecting that this morning when I woke up, but here we go. I'm going to be in the Pride Parade. So a couple of seconds later, she kind of unfolds the banner, and she puts somebody else at the other end of the banner, and I'm thinking, okay, well, so we probably have to wait for one of the corporations, to come by, and then we're going to carry their corporate banner for them. I can do that. This is easy enough. And then we're at 10:59, and it dawns on me. She's setting us up at the beginning of the parade. I'm carrying the banner. No, I mean I'm carrying the lead banner. I'm carrying the banner that says Ashley Rook's, GLBTQ Pride Parade, that banner. Wow. She took one look at my face and she came running right over to me. And by this time, the police car in front of us, the lights are going, so we've got to start. And I'm starting to back up. And she said, "Listen, Michelle." So I'm serious, she was right in my face right here. She wasn't quiet either. She said, "Listen, we need our moms. We need our advocates. The world is ready for you to take your place. You're doing this." I am pretty sure at that moment, Andy was the Holy Spirit. I should add, before this day 10 years ago, for me, I'm a visual person, so my visual of the Holy Spirit, how it's always been kind of a little wispy fairy, scattering some dust, like a Tinkerbell with a little wand, okay? Sorry, but that's just me, okay? Now, the Holy Spirit in my head is this stern lesbian woman that you don't dare say no to. The answer has been yes for 10 years for me. She had said to me, "The world is ready for you to take your place, Michelle." Now, Andy had no way of knowing that I had adopted a life slogan as I had worked through my depression years before that. The life slogan that I had adopted was written by author and poet David White, who says, "The universe is holding its breath, waiting for you to take your place." I knew something really spiritual was happening, okay? I honestly felt a little bit terrified. So it was 11 a.m., and we were off. We started to walk. Everything in me wanted to turn around and run back, okay? My first feelings were there's somebody else much more worthy than me. I'm a nobody, I'm just a mom. Okay, you've got to give this honor to somebody else because it belongs to somebody else, not me. But Dykes on Bikes were right behind us. And I'm saying that with love, okay? But that's another thing So anyway, that wasn't the only reason, obviously. Jesus was holding my hand. So I just kept walking. There were thousands of people lining both sides of the street. It was so sunny, hot, and windy, and in my brain, wherever there's wind, there's the Holy Spirit. Right, Dylan? Right. After about the first block, my heart started to break. Not in, I have a broken heart because I didn't get something I wanted. I mean, I had a broken heart because God broke my heart open. I think we know we're in a holy moment when the things that break the heart of God break ours too. And I'm going to say that again. I think we know when we're in a holy moment because the things that break the heart of God break our hearts too, okay? I began to weep uncontrollably behind my sunglasses. I wept for all the beloved people in the crowds who I walked by who didn't have a mom or a parent or a family. I had been a mom and I had made so many mistakes. I wept because the world was and is so incredibly cruel to our GLBTQ folks. That pain felt like it was sucking the life right out of me. I wept because when one person is marginalized for whatever reason, Jesus weeps too. And it's not simply part of the abundant life plan. It's not okay. I wept because I knew how a lot of churches had been treating GLBTQ folks. Hey, come to our church, we'll tolerate you, but we won't celebrate you. Who wants to be tolerated? Seriously, come on. I wept because these beautiful people that were lining the sides of the street could not legally get married at the time. I wept because at the church that we had attended, a pastor had taken me aside in private one day after church and said, you know, maybe your son should go live with his dad or his parents or your parents or maybe foster home, Michelle. You might need to get that evil out of your house. Yeah, so obviously none of those things ever happened, but we were definitely done with that church. I wept because my boy had been hurt. He had been hurt by the very people I had trusted with our hearts. I wept because a lot of our straight white friends didn't have a clue and maybe would never have a clue. I wept with such profound sadness, but I had one of the holiest moments I've ever had in my life when my heart broke open that day. Then about Black Floor, something changed in me, and the wind took a big gust. That wind, all the time for me. I physically felt like something was sucking the air out of my lungs and putting something else new back in. And then the wind began to die down. People were screaming in joy and celebration. And I knew, just like the Grinch figured out Christmas Day morning, that my heart had grown, maybe even 3 sizes that day. I realized the world had been lying to me. They had lied. You all know who I'm talking about when I say they had lied. Those in charge, those making the decisions, those with authority, they lied to me, and now I knew it. These GLBTQ folks weren't trying to take anything away from anybody. They were simply trying to take their place in the world and in the net of gems, and those in power didn't like it. So many things that I'd been told throughout my life melted away during that 30 minutes that I carried that banner that day. I felt like God whispered to my heart, I've got this, Michelle. I've got your son. I've got all the sons and daughters that you see at this parade today. I love them all. The ground is equal. The ground is level at the foot of the cross. You take your place in this world, Michelle, and you be a voice wherever you can, especially in places where my sons and daughters can't speak right now. You use your voice. You use what you know to be truth now today, and you go and tell the truth. And that, my friends, is the day that this advocate was born. Obviously, that first Pride Parade changed my life. It changed me. You can ask anybody who knows me. We lost a whole bunch of friends, but we've got so many cool friends now. Yeah. I started to understand the importance of what we mirror. When one hurts, we all hurt. When one is in the margins, it's up to all of us to reach out and help those in the margins. It's not an option. It's truly our duty. Jesus asked us all to take our place in the world and in the net of gems and advocate for others. If we've been given a voice, we have to use it. No one is born to be marginalized. John O'Donohue says that one of our deepest longings of the human soul is to be seen. Every soul is born for a unique purpose. And if you feel today like you don't have a purpose, just wait. It's coming, all right? You maybe will have the air sucked out of you and new life breathed into you. I don't know what it's going to look like for you, but please hang on. It will happen. You'll just know somehow when it does. I found a much needed spiritual peace in studying Indra's net of gems, which is what this is. while I was in grad school, which was right about the time that I volunteered for the Pride Parade that year. Indra's net of gems comes from a Buddhist and Hindu story which is said to be thousands of years old. My husband Dale made this net of gems for me for my thesis when I graduated, and at my thesis presentation I talked about how we reflect off each other. Please know that you are a sparkling jewel in Indra's net, as is every person around you. A change in one jewel or a change in one person produces a change in every other. The net can work for good or it can work for ill because, of course, just as destructive acts affect the entire net, so do loving, constructive, compassionate acts affect the entire net. A single helpful act will send positive ripples across the infinite net, touching every jewel, every person in existence. Francis Harold Cook describes the metaphor of Indra's net from this perspective. Far away in the heavenly abode of the great god Indra, there is a wonderful net which has been hung by some cunning artificer in such a manner that it stretches out infinitely in all directions. In accordance with the extravagant tastes of the deities, the artificer has hung a single glittering jewel in each eye of the net. And since the net itself is infinite in dimension, the jewels are infinite in number. There hang the jewels, glittering like stars in the first magnitude, a wonderful sight to behold. If we now arbitrarily select one of these jewels for inspection and look closely at it, we will discover that in its polished surface, there are reflected all of the other jewels in the net, infinite in number. Not only that, but each of the jewels reflected in this one jewel is also reflecting all of the other jewels. So there is an infinite reflecting process occurring. As you hold the gem in your pocket or purse this week, please remember you are a gem in the net. You are needed. You are important. You matter. Thank you, beloved community, for what you have given to me. I'm a life that is deeply and forever changed by all of you. Thank you for mothering me. Please let your gem shine this week. Please take your place in the world. It's your time. It's our time. We love you. I love you. God bless.